Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us this evening for the redistricting process. Hopefully the mic will work a little bit better here. So, Norma, can you switch up the mic? Maybe this one keeps going in and out. Hopefully this is better. And John, you're starting the recording? Thank you. So I want to start by introducing to you my staff, and we also have a vendor, or actually our demographer, who's going to later show us a presentation on how to use District-R, or District-R, depending on how we want to pronounce that. And that's a website that allows you to draw your own map. And just to begin, my name is Daisy Gomez. I'm the clerk of the council for the city of Santa Ana. And then I have Norma here standing, and then John, our IT team. And then in the back, we have Dora, Tran, and Linda. So we are all bilingual speakers in Spanish. Tran speaks also Vietnamese. And just in case you feel more comfortable asking in your foreign tongue, I just wanted to bring that out to you. We also have our translators here. And so they're back there. If you need any translation devices or specific language, please make sure you speak to one of them. So that's right here. And then we have our mayor, who I will give him the floor in a minute, Mayor Sarmiento, and he will just give you a quick introduction. And then we have Liz with Redistricting Partners. So with that, I did want to also make sure you help yourself to, we got you snacks and water, coffee, and make sure that you have handouts with you. Those handouts are going to be important for you to complete later. And then whatever you write on that handout, like the mapping tool that we provided, make sure that you give it to us. If you want to take it home, that's fine, but I just ask if we could take a picture of it. We just need a recording of what your thoughts are about what you think is part of your community. So I just want to make sure that before you leave that we at least get to see whatever it is that you put on that paper. And then if you want to later just submit it to our office, you're welcome to do that. And we'll go over how to do that in a little bit. And with that, so I want to introduce the mayor, Sarmiento, if you wouldn't mind giving just a few words.
Well, I'm not that tall, but I'd rather be on the same level as you. So I figured this would be a conversation more than speaking to you. I just want to welcome you. I'm Vicente Sarmiento, mayor of the city of Santa Ana. But I was also formerly a council member that represented this area. So that's why I wanted to be here, especially because based upon the maps that were drawn in 2018 as a result of some litigation that we dealt with, this board actually isn't represented. So I just thought it was important for somebody to come and speak. More importantly, just to welcome and thank you for participating in the process and making sure that we have robust, community engagement, involvement. Really, our hope is that whatever maps we decide on come from you, members like you who understand how important this is, because we don't do this often. This is done typically every 10 years. So this basically is going to dictate who represents it, what resources can be brought. And we want it to be as open and transparent a process. And because this is the first one, this will be a first in a series of community engagement opportunities. Our clerk of the council is very humble. It's a large task that she's undertaking the first step. So I want to thank them for being here on a Saturday morning. We're going to try to be as accommodating as members of the public and to meet at hours that are convenient. Because more than anything, it's important that we understand what you're thinking. So in a nutshell, what this is redrawing lines and boundaries. So we now have some data from the census that just occurred in 2020, and that's been given to us, and we have some professional staff that are going to help us define and kind of do some analysis on where population shifts. We know a lot of people, unfortunately, according to the last census data, left Santa Ana. So in 2010, the number, our population number based upon that census data was about 337,000. And presently, the data shows that we're at 310,000. So that means that there is a net loss of 27,000 residents. You know, personally, I believe that there was probably an undercount, because as you recall, there were a lot of really odd things that were happening during that census process. There was talk about a question on there, disclosing whether you were a citizen or not, which I think made people refrain and retract, be more willing to participate in the census process. Also, we just have a very hard reach community. Many residents who are interested in documenting, and sometimes that population is not so willing to participate in disclosing information that's very private, and I understand that. So I think we're probably not at 310 that census data shows, but we're somewhere in between 7. But we know we've experienced a net loss of residents. So we want to understand why that's happening. We want to understand why people are left the city, why people may be moving to different parts of the city. And this is that study. This is basically that process to understand these different shifts, intra-city and outside the city. So I think it's a really important exercise that we can't emphasize enough how valuable, you know, your versions of how you think, you know, saying, I don't want this boundary drawn in my neighborhood. You know, it's really important that these schools are kept in certain wards. All those priorities that are important to you. I'm going to be just very careful. The rest of the city council will. Hopefully, what happens is the maps that are generated in these community meetings are maps that we eventually work on. Because I know that those are the ones that are most meaningful. Those are made up. So I just wanted to welcome you. Thank you. This is the first one in the series. I'll probably see you throughout. And hopefully we're going to get, you know, obviously more people. And I just want to thank our partners at Redistricting for helping guiding us through this. But please, you know, to the extent you can, share this information with neighbors and relatives and others who live in the city. It's really super critical that they participate and understand the importance of their role. It's almost as critical as voting. This is a robust process. So, gracias, buenos dias, welcome. I turn it back over for questions.
And thank you all. So with that, next slide, please. I did want to show you, and especially the mayor covered a lot of it. In 2018, the city of Santa Ana already drew these lines. And this was based on 2010 census data. Now, the census data that came out is 2020, so we're going to see that there's going to be changes to this map. And why you're here is primarily because we need to hear what you feel is part of your community. So we want to make sure that when lines are being drawn, we're not cutting a part of your neighborhood that you feel you belong to. So we not need to know where, we need to know what the area is, why is the most important, why you feel connected to that area. Next slide, please. So what we're going to cover in this agenda is the redistricting basics, traditional redistricting principles, the communities of interest, the map tool demonstration, which is what our partner redistricting partner is going to be showing you later, and then public testimony on communities of interest, which essentially just means it's your public input. And then the public hearing schedule. We want to make sure that you also know when this is going to be presented by council. So any input you provide is considered a testimony, and they're going to use that to consider when they're drawing lines. Next slide. start with asking the question, what is redistricting? Redistricting is a process of adjusting ward lines, and it happens every 10 years based on the U.S. Census data. Normally, the data for the census years will be released in late March or the following year. However, due to the pandemic and the attempt to insert citizenship questions on the census form, amongst other things, the data wasn't released until late August. So for the city of Santa Ana, the final map is due April 2022. Local government redistricting are also going to go through their redistricting process, and the city of Santa Ana must also go through the process. So we know that congressional and state legislators in the county are already starting the process. With the city of Santa Ana, we want to make sure we keep one thing in mind. We want to create wards of equal population. Redistricting also serves to empower the local community and preserve your voting rights. The purpose of having this redistricting process is to make sure that there's representation and drawing our ward boundaries. The goal, next slide, please. So the goals of our community workshops are to conduct these the hearings here so that the public can identify the communities of interest, and we'll define what that means later in the slide. And we also want to present a recommended map or maps to the city council based on what you provide to us. We do have staff available to help answer questions and to receive your testimonies. And again, anything you put down as your public input is considered a testimony, and we want to capture that. So that way the city council and redistricting partners can put all that into consideration. Next slide, please. Traditional redistricting principles. Those are principles that the council have considered when drafting and finalizing their final map. There are also a number of criteria that have to be used nationally and upheld by courts. The first one is creating wards of relatively equal size. When we are talking about this, we're talking about the people, not citizens, using the census data. Contiguous means that the wards cannot hop or jump an area or a neighborhood. We're going to ensure that all of the wards are in touch with one another. They're intact. Maintaining communities of interest is a concept that we will go more in depth during this presentation. It's crucial for us to maintain what the Fair Maps Act mandates. Another thing is that the council could look at the following
I can't check
with other local government lines, such as school district boundaries, recreational areas, or other lines that exist in the community that would uplift. The council can consider that while drafting a map, the last criteria is keeping the district compact. It can appear compact or functionally compacted. The compactness definition in California is to not bypass nearby or far away population. So looking at areas around the wards you're creating and trying not to move your lines to grab far away population. We want to make it as even as possible. Another thing to consider is that a ward has an odd shaped outline. It does not mean that it is being gerrymandered. It could mean that the council wants to maintain a specific community and neighborhood in one area. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on this slide, I just wanted, what we're going to focus on next is maintaining the communities of interest. Next slide. Communities of interest is about remaining ourselves that residents of the city of Santa Ana are the experts of our community. Nobody knows it better than you. The residents are the ones who are aware of how they functionally navigate around the city. So the term communities of interest is about bringing like-minded people together for representation. It's also the building block for wards. It's a high criteria for this redistricting process. Some community of interest includes ethnic and language minorities and other groups. Something to remember during these redistricting workshops and process is that because we are discussing about how people navigate through the city of Santa Ana, we want to remind our residents that communities are subjective And we want people to remain open-ended as it is, we want to include as many people as possible. Some communities are covered by the Voting Rights Act, and those specific three are Latino, Asian, and African American. Next slide, please. On this next slide, what's extremely important to remember that during the process, while communities of interest may include race, it cannot be the only reason. It can't be the only factor or the major reason in drawing the ward boundaries. Next slide, please. To help you understand what you can think about when you're submitting your draft map or when you're writing in your comments, your testimony, please describe your neighborhood. We provided different areas that you might think about, and we listed it here. These are a wide variety of things that people can come forward and give testimonies on, or your public comment. Communities of interest could include your neighborhood, renters versus homeowners, school districts, recreational area, cultural amenities, religious facilities. I mean, it's just a whole long list of things, and there's many more that we didn't even list here. Next slide, please. So now we're going to go over what is not a community of interest. And the purpose of that is so we can prevent gerrymandering. We want to make sure that you understand these are the main things that are listed in the Fair Acts map. One is political party affiliation. An example of this is an individual who gives us a comment solely based on their political party affiliation. So they say that they're Republican or Democrat, Green Party, or something to that effect. The council is not allowed to use that testimony as consideration as a community of interest input. The second is incumbents. Similarly to political party affiliation, an incumbent is somebody who ran at one election and they won, and they want to run again. You can't just draw a line to make sure that they're covered in the same area. The third is the political candidate. For example, a testimony that says, I live in this area, I really want wards to remain the same because I want to run for council. That's not a testimony that the council can use for consideration or a community of interest input. So we recognize that there is a right of members of the public to come and share their testimony, but in the end, it's up to the council to determine what things are allowable in order for them to do their redistricting process or their wards without violating the Fair Maps Act. In addition to that, it is difficult to consider groups of similarly minded people who do not share a similar geographic location or are citywide. Next slide, please. Members of the public are always welcome to come forward and share their testimony, but it's the job of the council to determine what can and cannot be used. There are questions that will help members of the public think through what their testimonies mean for the redistricting process. And this is going to help you complete those community interest worksheets. The first question is, does your community have a shared culture, characteristics, or bonds? A lot of us think of ourselves as being part of an ethnic group, but beyond being Latino or Asian, what are other characteristics that tie our community together? So think about where you go shopping, if you go to a specific park, if you go to church together, think of where it's located, what it is about that location, and why. The second question is,
if we ever
the
have a similar,
community geographic
we can host
nature.
Zoom on yours,
Is
and
the
then you just make
community
me a
able to be mapped?
co-host so I can share.
So visual maps are most preferred when we're unable to visually write or verbally provide a testimony without a visual map or geography. Sometimes it's easier to say, there's a train track in my neighborhood, and you think that that's the dividing piece. So you can use that on a map. We recommend that you include street boundaries, neighborhood names, or specific location in such that we can want to make sure we don't misinterpret the preferred map or boundaries that you list. And then the third question is, The testimony that needs to be considered is describe your community's relationship with the jurisdiction and how it's affected by the policy decisions made by the elected officials. What that means is consider what your community's relationship is with the city council. What are the policies or regulations or laws that make and that will affect your community? These are the things that will help you evaluate and determine whether or not you should be providing that on your worksheets, on your testimony. Next slide, please. Now I want to start by asking you a question, and you can nod or you can speak up, but this is an example, and this is really just to help you get started on what you should be writing on your community interest forms. So a group of renters who live downtown testified to the city council. Would this be considered a community of interest? Do the public members in the audience think that renters who live in downtown could be considered as a community of interest? What do you think? Next slide, please. If the public members in the audience nodded and agreed and they said yes, you are correct. As a group of residents, you can easily map in a district area and share a common policy interest. That can be addressed through legislation or public services. Next slide, please. Here's the next question. A part of town that has a historic nature, either a former hub of business, so it's an area where it has a lot of businesses, a community, or an area that's been discriminated against through maybe somebody denying a particular group of people who live in an area alone just because maybe there is a financial risk, or if they maybe had a racially restrictive contract, so not allowing other groups to purchase or lease properties. And this happened back in the 40s. Of course, you never know when you still see that. And so those are the types of different community groups that can that are identified here. Should the city council prioritize these areas when drawing their maps? What is the audience think? Nod your head and think yes. Next slide, please. Or no? Yes. Historical communities and other areas with historic discrimination, they can and should be recognized as a community of interest when drawing the maps. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at the example above. Should this community be considered a community of interest by the city council? A group of dog owners living in a suburb banded together to push their local elected officials to put a dog water fountain in their dog park. Next slide, please. Yes, this group of people in a shared community should be considered. They have a need for the same public service. Next slide, please. A statewide group for people who are fans of San Francisco Giants testify to the city council. Is this considered a community interest group? Next slide, please. No, it wouldn't. And the reason for that is because a community interest group has to be distinct enough to draw on a map. The group overlaps throughout the entire state, and it's unlikely that a governing agency has any say over these issues. Next slide, please. On this slide, what we're showing you is what a community of interest form looks like online. It's slightly different than the one you have printed, but it's asking for the same information. And it's also translated on the website. So if you prefer to submit it online, you're welcome to do so. Next slide, please. We also provided online map submission, and we don't have the mapping tool available yet on our website, but that should be coming to us next week. But what we did do is print it out for you, so you can go ahead and utilize that and draw your map area. want to make sure that you recognize that the community of interest maps were actually starting to be available in September and towards the end of the month. And that's primarily because that was when a lot of the data was released. And also that the district plans based on the 2020 data was, does need to have a final adoption. So we do need your input on that before that happens. The district maps can be drawn based off of the 2020 census data, which outlines the whole city. So if you wanted to just provide input only on your community, you can do that. But you will also have the option of drawing lines for the entire city. And you can also do that and submit either one. Next slide, please. There will also, this is the website that we're still waiting to be posted up, but when it is, it will be provided on our city website. So really we'll go over later in the slide to show you where you can go to make sure that all your anytime the city of Santa Ana updates their website, where you can go and view that information. Next slide. There are also paper maps, as I stated, that you can go ahead and use so that you can go ahead and print. We have pens, we have clipboards, and we have staff. So if you have any questions, you need help with anything at all that we can help identify for you. If we can't help you today, we want to make sure we get your contact information and we will follow up with you. And so this here is a community mapping tool. It's another form because some people prefer to draw out the lines, and we make sure that we cover the entire city on this mapping tool. So you can go ahead and draw out your portion, or again, you can draw out just what you think is the citywide boundaries could look like. We do ask that you provide your community name. So if you have a neighborhood association, you can do that. And then your name and email or phone number, whatever is easier for you, us to contact you. And then a description of what you think is part of your community. The more details you provide, the more accurate the drawings will be. Next slide, please. And this is when we're going to be having our redistricting workshops. The purpose of us coming to you is so that it's easier, more convenient for us to connect with you. So you don't have to go all the way to City Hall or out of your way, and I think for the ones who did. But we want to come to your communities. So if you feel a need that you need us somewhere else, because maybe this isn't the location or the time, please contact me. I want to be there in your communities. I want to get as much input as I can from your communities. So I ask you to spread the word with all of your neighbors, all your church friends, your family, anyone who lives in the city of Santa Ana who has interest in providing that input for us. We need that. Next slide, please. The city council, in addition to the workshops that we're holding, we're also inviting you to participate in public hearings. You can listen to the testimonies that are being provided there. This is when the council will hear what our demographer from Redistricting Partners put together, and they're going to bring those testimonies to the council. And they're going to help by providing a map. So if you want to hear what's happening, you can definitely do that. However, your comment doesn't need to be restated more than once. These community workshops are designed so that we can get your input as much as possible before these dates. We want to make sure we get that comment before these dates. Next slide, please. We are also making sure that if you can't come to a location, you can participate by Zoom. And currently right now we're being recorded, and there's a camera that is going to show up in YouTube later today on our website. And it's essentially allowing everybody who's participating by Zoom or by phone call to also provide their input. And they can go to the website and and have the same information that you have here. So you do not have to be physically present. Next slide, please. The website that I keep talking about, that I want to make sure everybody knows that they can go to is www.santa-ana.org/redistricting. And again, we are providing everything in all of the languages that we have been mandated to. Next slide. Now with that, does anybody have any questions before I hand this over to Liz? Liz is going to go ahead and you can go ahead and have her connect, John. Liz is going to go over the district mapping tool. Even though we don't have the city of Santa Ana ready yet, what we do have is at least the website, and she just wants to show you how to use it. It's a fun tool if you like drawing maps or if you like using that sort of technology, you're welcome to do that. Some people prefer to write it in pen or pencil and draw it out. And I'm going to pass this over to her now.
Really excited to be here with you all. I'm going to show you how to use Districtor. So the Santa Ana Districtor page will be on the website that she just showed. So check in next week. It will be specifically for this city. But let's go ahead and just practice on a random place. So here we are going to draw a district-wide. So here you have the hand. This moves the map. You can zoom in on your mouse or by using these little plus and minus signs. This brush right here is what allows you to draw the districts that you want to make. And this eraser allows you to erase anything that you feel like you want to get rid of. You can also change the size of it to erase a whole bunch at the same time. And same with the brush, you can add a whole bunch at the same time. Or you can get specific and just add one. And these are broken up by census blocks, in case anyone's wondering. And then this little magnifying glass, this allows you to see more specifically who lives in those blocks. It breaks up the population. And let's look at how you can use this to draw your own maps in a way that's fair and balanced. So if you look here, it tells you exactly how many people are in that district. And remember, we want every district to be equal. So it also tells you the ideal population and it tells you the max deviation. So here for Santa Ana, the max deviation we can have is 10%. So if you are drawing districts and you want it to be usable, then you will have to have it within that 10% deviation. So let's see if we can get this down closer to the ideal population. Okay, and now we're going to draw another district. So here they only give you the amount of seats, and you can't overlap. Well, lock it and you can't overlap. And you can see here that the deviation is getting smaller. And you have the ability to draw all of the wards that you want, or you can draw as few as you want, as long as it's no more than the amount of wards that we have. So let's say you're happy with how that looks. We're going to save it. And you can do a couple things. So you can copy this URL and you can email it in, share it. This will have everything that you have done here. Or when Santa Ana has their website up and running, you can just hit save to the gallery, and that will allow you to automatically send it in, and you don't have to do any more work after that. And everyone at the city and the demographers will have your testimony. So that is how you draw districts. Let me show you how to draw your communities of interest. Because those are the two maps that we are drawing. Let's draw Long Beach. Okay, so this is a little different than drawing districts. Here, we don't need to worry about how many people are in the population. It doesn't have to be equal. This is just you drawing your community, and you have the ability to describe your community as well. So these buttons do the same thing as the district-wide one as well. So again, we're just going to draw randomly to show how to use it. And now we have the ability to name our community, and we can describe it as well. So I suggest describing what makes your community unique, how do you come together, and then how is your community impacted by the city council. And of course, you can draw multiple of these as well. There is no limit on how many kois you can draw. And just remember to name it and describe it as well. And then you have the option to draw an important place. So this can be like a park that is that your community revolves around, or some kind of community center. You have the ability to name it and describe why that's important to your community as well. You can also look at the data layers and see the different population. The citizen voting age population we have there as a part of the Voting Rights Act way of telling Section 2. So that's why it's important for us to have this as well. So again, once you're happy with how you drew your community of interest, you can go ahead and save it. And then you'll have the option to share it to the gallery on the website. Just a reminder, you won't be able to retract any maps, so make sure you're happy with the map before you submit it. But with that, that is Districtor, and I'm happy to take questions. Hand it back to you.
Did anyone have any questions? And we could always talk after this if there's no at this time. It would be a question we can have after. Okay, well, thank you so much. I asked you if you want to go ahead and complete that, if you want my turning on the lights. If you want to complete that and then just submit it to us, or we can take a picture of it. That way everybody can provide some sort of input to us. You don't have to do it now today. You're definitely welcome to take it home, or you could also use that as a template so that you can submit something later if you prefer to use the mapping tool. Whatever is easier for you. Yes, sir.
We have a question on Zoom. Excuse me. When is the tool going to be available?
The tool should be available sometime next week. Because we got our census data, the last piece of our census data recently, the demographer has been working tirelessly to make sure that that information is included in our mapping tool. So we want to give you the most accurate information, so we're waiting for that. So it should be ready next week. Anything else, Marla? That's all. Okay. Thank you so much for participating in WAN Zoom and being here. And I welcome you to, the snacks and all the stuff that we have here. If there's any information that we can answer please spread the word. We really want your community to provide input, primarily because of the fact that this only happens once every 10 years. We don't want, once this is done, it's done, there's no going back. So whatever it is that you can provide to us in your community, or if you happen to know a resident in the city who has information that could be very useful for the city council to understand that there's a community that maybe they don't know about, that maybe has been neglected, we want to hear about that. So that way council can make policy decisions. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate your time here.
But yeah, I kind of looked at it closer. I swear we why would it be so catastrophic? That's well, why would it be so catastrophic to say we were here and suddenly Golden Park or whatever it is ends up in a different language? Which would be a city council.
Normal? It's still running, right?
Yeah, so we can go ahead and.
I can't. This thing is, oh, okay, thank you.
No worries. Oh, and that's, I think that was me. Okay. I think we can.
Okay.
Stop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.